Hey there, this is Jonathan. In the following tutorial, we are going to take a look at doing some animation tasks using graphic symbols out of Flash. Now, we're also going to come back to this file and do some cool animations with it. But first, let's begin by creating a brand new document. And this time we'll use HTML5 canvas, it's fine, and just leave it at its default size. Now, what we're going to do is a multi-tiered animation in a way using graphic symbols, which is really very powerful in Flash for animation. Let's begin by creating just a very simple rectangle. Now, as soon as we've created a rectangle, what I'm going to do is basically turn this into a propeller, and we'll be able to see that animation when we turn it into a graphic symbol animation. So let's first convert it into a symbol, and instead of a movie clip, I'm going to go ahead and call it a graphic symbol. Now I'm going to give it a name, and I'll call this my rectangle. Beautiful. Now that I have that created, now I know that when I do the animation, I want it to actually spin from a center point. And so you'll see if I start spinning it, fortunately it's aligned to the center point already because it does that by default, which is really kind of cool. But you'll see that this will matter in just a second when we go into the next step. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to actually spin this inside of its own graphic symbol. So I'm going to go back and convert it into a graphic symbol again. And this is going to be the spinning rectangle. Beautiful. Now let's double click to go inside of it. So I'm inside the spinning rectangle, and here's where I want to do a little animation. I'm going to do about 30 frames. So I just clicked on the first frame and then held down the Alt key and then clicked and dragged it over to frame 30. Be aware that you have to do that as two separate steps. You can't do it in one step. The other way to do it is just go to frame 30, right click, and choose Insert Keyframe. Now the reason I'm doing this is just so I can do a very simple classic tween, and then once I click on that, I'm going to go over to the Auto Rotate and just go ahead and auto rotate it one direction one time. So what it's done is it's automatically rotated this object for me one time. Now I'll go back to my main layer, and you'll see if I try and scrub my timeline, I can't see anything at all. So instead, let's go to frame 30, and now I'm just going to insert a frame. Boom. The reason I didn't do a keyframe is I don't actually want to make a new frame for this object. I just wanted to insert a frame. In fact, I'll even take this frame and drag it out a little bit to like frame 60 or 65. Now you do have to be careful about dragging things out, because you'll see like right here it actually created a new keyframe for us. So if you do the click and drag method, oftentimes you have to clear that extra keyframe that you've created so that you just have a frame. Otherwise you'd come out here and just do insert frame. So anyway, the beauty of using a graphic symbol is that the graphic symbol animation is dependent upon the timeline that graphic symbol is on and the length of the timeline of the original graphic symbol. So what's cool about this is that you'll see that it's automatically looping for me, and that is very, very cool. If you click on the graphic symbol, you'll be able to actually go and see where you can change your looping section, so you can play it only once, or you could just play a single frame, and you could choose any of the individual frames of that, and it would stay on that if you did single. But if you do loop, then it'll just loop forever and ever and ever. Well, this is a really powerful feature of using graphic symbols, because you get to see them the way that they're used in the animation, and you can start to actually add multiple things together. For example, I could make him now go from the top to the bottom and back up to the top, and here I'll move him down, and then I can do a tween between the two with a classic tween, and you'll see that he's spinning and he goes down and then he spins back up. Now you'll notice that he does something funky right here, and what happened is he switched. So I do need to find out what frame I'm starting on. So right here, if you notice, I'm starting at frame 24. So I'm going to go to that guy, and the first frame will be 24. So that way I'm making sure that it is synced. Wow. How about I change that to 1? See what happens. So you can see this can get a little funky. Now if I really wanted to be more conscientious, then I would probably take it to 30 frames because that's the length of the tween inside there. So now it should be a little bit more, should work a little bit better. Let's see. Right there, first at 1. Let's see what time he starts at. Might not be starting at 1. That's why we're getting such weird stuff. That starts at 1. Now this starts at 30. Now we should be getting it in sync with each other. Correct. And then we come back to the original. Make sure that's starting at 1. So anyway, this just kind of introduces you to just like the idea of using a graphic symbol. Might go ahead and save out this file as your spinning rectangle. But now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this Bilbo animation. The way we do that is let's create a new document, and this time it's going to be using a template, HTML5 canvas, and the sample animation. Now that we have this Bilbo animation in here, you'll see that we can scrub our timeline. It's about 35 frames long. And we can see what that Bilbo animation is doing. Now, first things first, and that is if we look at our navigation, or our layers here on the left, you'll see that we don't really have a really well organized file. And so I would always tell you to go ahead and name the layers according to what they are. So this is his back right foot, Bilbo back right. This one is his back front. This is Bilbo front right foot. And it doesn't matter exactly. This is his body. And then this is his front left. So you'll see that I named things different ways. Sometimes I have a dash, sometimes I have Bilbo. It doesn't really matter as long as you've given them names and they're somewhat consistent. Alright, now, if we take a look at this animation, we can actually go inside any of the different pieces. Like if we go inside of his body, you'll see that we have an animation inside here that's 25 frames, and it's using a bunch of classic tweens, which means all of the different objects that are inside the classic tweens are library items, which are symbols. And you'll see they're using basically everything is our graphic symbols except for this shadow. And the reason they might have made the shadow different is if they wanted to put some sort of effect on it. For example, we could now do something like a blur on that if we wanted to. And that's kind of cool. Now, just something that's cool with motion, or whatever they're called. Movie clip symbols. Alright, so anyway, with this particular Bilbo, what I'd like to do is I'd like to move him into his own graphic symbol. So the way that we do this is we need to select everything, and at least this is what you would think, is you could select everything and right click and just say convert to a symbol. And if I make it here's the Bilbo anim, this seems like it should work. I've moved everything into one symbol, but I go inside of there and what it's done is it's deleted all of my animation. So this won't work. Instead, we're going to have to undo that, Control Z, until we get back all the layers. Then we select all the layers with Control A, and then we copy all the layers. So let's copy all those frames, copy frames. Now we will convert this to a symbol. Then go inside of it, and now we have to paste back our frames. So paste frames. There it is. Now it's moved our guy around a little bit, so that's not really a big deal because we can move him back as we need. But we do want to be aware of what happened to that registration point. So I'm going to double click on that, go inside here, and I want to try and move all the layers so that they are right where I want that registration point to be, right there in the center of them. Then I'm going to come back, and with this I'm going to go to my free transform, double click on that circle to make it snap to the origin point. Now I can get rid of these other layers that I don't need. Excellent. and I'll probably just call him Bilbo. Beautiful. Now I've got my basic symbol that if I scale him down a little bit, you'll see that he can continue his walk, which is great, and he's got his whole animation inside there. Now, one of the tasks that you can do with this is save out this as a cool little sprite sheet. So let's first save our document, and I'm going to call it Bilbo Animation, and I'm saving them in a folder I've already created. And now what we're going to do is output a sprite sheet, and this is a really cool feature. Once we've got that movie clip symbol created, and by the way, you want to make sure he's the right number of frames that you want to export. Now I'm going to right click, choose Generate Sprite Sheet, and see what I've got here. Now what it does is you'll see that it generates all the different frames that we've got there, and we can go ahead and export that. Hopefully he'll be saved into that same folder because I prepared it already. And there's my animation sprite sheet. The problem is you'll notice that they're not all aligned with each other. And the reason why is because the bounding box of this animation changes with each individual frame. Well, the way that we fix this is actually create a shape that's behind Bilbo inside the graphic symbol that's transparent. Let's show you how. I'm going to go back into this particular frame, and I'm going to create a layer underneath. And this layer underneath is going to have a box. So I'm going to just kind of eyeball it. Let me get to a place where it seems like he's kind of stretched out the furthest. And I'm going to go ahead and make a box that goes about the entire width of that animation. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about the exact color of this, but I'm going to do it so I can hopefully see him there. So I'll make it like yellow or something. And then you want to scan through and make sure he's not going any other places. So right here, he's definitely going too high. So I'm going to go to my free transform tool with the Q key and make that, stretch that out a little bit. And let's see. Looks like he's self-contained within that box all other times. Now what we could do is just trim that box just a little bit if you want, just to get rid of any extra little outer parts of that box. But it looks like overall he's pretty good. We might be able to shave off just a tiny bit there. But that should be our bounding box for this animation, which is awesome. Now what we do is we go to that and we take its opacity down to 0. It can be a little troublesome at times, but come on, get that animation. I don't know why this doesn't like it. I think it's partly the software that I'm using. There we go. I'll just click instead of click and drag. So now I've taken my opacity down to 0. It's still there in the background, but we just can't see it. That's awesome. Now when I come back to the main level and then I right click and choose Generate Sprite Sheet, we're going to write over that existing PNG that we have. And when I go and look at it, you'll see now the registration of all the objects are perfect. Now they are exactly aligned with each other. Now you can also control the amount of distance between them, by the way, inside that export dialog. I actually think I have some padding and some shape padding, which you could or could not have, doesn't really matter. I think by default it is set to 0. So a nice thing about knowing about that trick of using a background element is that you can actually control your padding with that as well. Just something to point out. Anyway, yay, now we'll output it, and I've just written over that animation. Excellent. Or that sprite. Now with this particular object, we're going to go ahead and do some animation with him. So the first thing he's going to do is walk from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen. I'm going to do that by inserting a keyframe and then having him walk from one side to the other and then doing a classic tween. Now you'll see that we get to watch him walk, which is really kind of cool. Now if we want him to switch directions, what we need to do is duplicate that frame so that we have 2 frames, and I did that with using the Alt key. Now what I want to do is switch this thing around. So in the free transform, right now I have him at about negative, or say 29%, almost 30%. I'm going to switch him around to negative 29 point whatever percent, and you'll see he's just flipped around. Now I can create a new keyframe a little bit later, so at about frame 70, and I'll have him go up here to the upper corner and have him scale up a bit. Beautiful. Then do the same thing where I want him to switch around. Go to the transform here, and I'm going to change him to negative 55. And then I'm going to have him go down to the bottom. And he'll scale up a little bit there. Excellent. Now I can go ahead and create my classic tweens in between. And you'll see that we can see this animation. Now it looks a little rough with him getting to each of these points and then turning around really quickly. So one of the things that we can do is apply some easing. If we do ease 100, then what we've got is he's easing into the out section of that keyframe, of that animation. So it means he'll slow down a little bit as he gets here. Then he comes up here, and so we'll do the same thing where he eases out a little bit, and then we'll do the same thing where he eases out here. Now, if we want to control it a little bit more, we can go to this and actually change it so that he slows out a little bit, and then he slows in as well, which I think is really effective, because this way he'll be picking up speed and then slowing down. So if you've gone ahead and made this animation, go ahead and save your work and test it with Control-Enter. And you'll see that you should now have a little walking animation for Bilbo. So pretty cool what you can do with little motion symbols or graphic symbols. I hope you enjoyed that, and go explore what you can create with sprites as well. It's a really effective way of creating sprites for other uses, including animations and even Edge Animate or something else in games. Thanks